use of UAS in the fire environment is very preliminary, but the missions that we have flown have been very successful in helping us to see how UAS could be effective, as well as helping identify areas in safety, operations, and administration that we need to really focus on to be effective use. They've been able to provide valuable information for our fire managers. The data have been used to create maps for fire perimeter and strategic planning, as well as mapping acreage, providing ground crews with real-time situational awareness, and being able to talk aerial resources into hotspots for water delivery.
So there's kind of different gradations, right, of UAS, from the very small ones like this 3DR Solo all the way up to the very large aircraft. What we found is that they are able to get some very high resolution imagery for things like mapping, post-fire assessment, as well as provide some real-time situational awareness to folks on the ground. So back in 2015, we had a demonstration project where we brought a few different aircraft out to fly on a few different fires. So the Paradise Fire in Olympic National Park and the Teepee Springs Fire up on the Paya National Forest. And those missions, we did a variety of different things, from real-time reconnaissance flights where we could transmit video back to the ICP from various parts of the fire, as well as some mapping flights where we took both infrared images and optical images, and then we're able to build some maps from that imagery. So it's really intelligence gathering, reconnaissance of the fire was the primary mission there. We also did a demonstration of the optionally piloted Type 1 helicopter, brought that out here to Boise, and were able to do things like deliver multiple loads of cargo, do spot drops of water, trailing drops of water, and things like that. From a success standpoint, I think that the major success is we were able to integrate into the existing structure of the ICS system using the existing management we have in place with air operations and air attacks and things like that. And we were able to successfully acquire the data that we could then use to create some usable product for folks on the ground, maps, video, that sort of thing.
In 2017, I see more testing and evaluation with fire integration, specifically on the part of our Department of Interior partners. The BLM is working to make pilots and aircraft available for continued fire integration, and we'll continue to work on data processing and identifying what products are useful to fire managers, as well as standard operating procedures, ordering, tracking, maintenance procedures, kind of filling in the blanks so that we're utilizing UAS effectively. Fire agencies really want to integrate UAS in a safe and thoughtful manner, and being able to integrate them in the complex airspace over fire is a challenge. The technology is changing fairly fast, and so being able to work with our manned aircraft to develop protocols for airspace is going to be a challenge in the future.
There is a plan to continue growth of the smaller UAS, so going out with some modules of trained pilots from the Department of the Interior and the Forest Service to try and gain some more experience in that operational environment, so that we can use those lessons learned to drive our policy and procedures down the road. In terms of larger aircraft, we're still seeking out ways to find the resources to bring those aircraft to bear, and so that's something that's ongoing.
Well, we've begun to identify situations regarding airspace coordination. Through working with manned pilots, we've been able to actually operate manned and unmanned aircraft at the same time, ensuring proper separation through virtual fences and solid communication. We're also starting to look at the capabilities of longer duration small UAS that are fixed wing that can be up over the over the fire all day long, pumping information down into the base camp and looking at real-time situational awareness available to ground crews through small or micro quadcopters.
There's a few challenges. Obviously change is hard, right? This is a big, like I said, it's a big evolution in aviation, and so anytime you introduce new technology, it's sometimes viewed very suspiciously, and rightfully so. We don't want to inject risk into the fire environment or a risky place. So educating our workforce on what the capability is, finding the best workflows to take the imagery, create a product. So data management is one of the big challenges. Obviously policy, not just Department of Interior policy or Forest Service policy, but interagency policy between the federal agencies and the states all has to be developed and fine-tuned so that we can introduce these aircraft safely into the fire environment. So, I'd say for me, my day-to-day job, the hardest part is the human part. Is just the education, and people have limited time to allocate to developing new programs, and then the data management, and then finally just the policy and procedures part.
We want to integrate UAS in a thoughtful way with as low as risk to man aviators and ground firefighters alike. Developing how UAS interfaces in that complex airspace is definitely a challenge. We want to make sure that we have the infrastructure in place for operating, tracking, ordering, and maintenance of UAS in the fire environment. We need standard operating procedures for when ground crews can pop up their small UAS so that that's being handled safely. And lastly, one of the challenges is educating the public on how come we're using UAS over a wildfire but they shouldn't. The airspace over wildfire is fairly complex. You have multiple different aircraft types doing different missions at different altitudes, and safety really depends on knowing what aircraft are out there and what they're going to do. So unauthorized UAS poses a risk through distraction to the manned pilots, as well as the risk of a mid-air collision. Certainly unauthorized UAS, where they lose lost link of their control system and fall out of the sky, they pose a risk to firefighters on the ground. Our response to unauthorized UAS over a fire is to pull back the aviation resources until we're sure that the risk is no longer present. That leaves our ground firefighters without the aerial resources that they need, as well as not fully implementing our suppression tactics.
I think it can't be understated that this is probably the biggest change in aviation since the Wright brothers. So I fully anticipate we're going to see massive growth in the use of these aircraft for both fire and non-fire missions. I think there's so many applications that we can use these aircraft for that I think in kind of all levels we're going to see continued growth.
UAS is showing real potential in the fire management application, and federal land management agencies are working hard to integrate it safely. From the field, it may seem like not much is going on, but the agencies really are working on getting the structure in place so that integration is introduced in the fire environment, UAS is introduced in the fire environment in a safe and thoughtful manner. We need to be sure that we're addressing any gaps, and we're doing it as low risk as possible. But it's really a crawl, walk, run approach, but I foresee one day soon that fire managers have UAS as a standard resource available to them for fire management.